All right, guys, we're continuing with doing markers in New Madrid County, Missouri. What do you think so far? Hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. So continue to stay with us as we finish up these markers in New Madrid County. All right, we are here in New Madrid, Missouri. This nice sign wants to let us know that we are standing on the New Madrid fault line. Let's just hope that there are no earthquakes going to happen while I'm standing right on it. But of course, we don't live far from here, and if there's ever a big earthquake in the fault, we would know. It would affect us. All right, New Madrid. We're going to read this marker. Now, it's both sides of this marker, so it's going to take me a little bit. First American town in Missouri, founded in 1789 by George Morgan, Princeton graduate and Indian trader on the site of Francois and Joseph Lesueur's trading settlement. L'Alliance à la Grey, former cove of fat. I'll tell you what, you've heard about me in French. We don't get along. Okay. Flood and caving banks have destroyed the first town site. Named for Madrid, Spain, the town was to be an American colony. Morgan was promised 15 million acres by the Spanish ambassador, eager to check U.S. expansion with large land grants. Spain did not confirm his grant, but gave land to colonists. Morgan left, but he had started American immigration to Missouri. But he was not happy. French and American settlers contributed to town growth. Here were founded a Catholic church in 1789, a Methodist church in 1810, and here was the southern extent of El Camino Real, or King's Highway, 1789. There are over 160 Indian mounds in the county, 2 near town. Boot Heel counties, including a strip of New Madrid, are said to be part of Missouri through efforts of J.H. Walker, 1794 to 1860, planter at Little Prairie, Caruthersville, Pemscott County. In nearby Mississippi County is Big Oak Tree State Park, a notable hardwood forest. We're going to move over to the other side of this sign. Okay, there we go. The New Madrid earthquake, made up of a series of monstrous and lesser shocks, which began December 16, 1811, and continued over a year, centered here. One of the great earthquakes of the world. Because of severity and length, it caused little loss of life in a thinly settled region. Some of the shocks were felt as far as 1,100 miles. Reelfoot Lake, across the river, is a result of the disaster. New Madrid land certificates. Going back to Reelfoot Lake, when I was a child, we used to camp there. But from what I've heard reports of, it's been losing water every year. So I don't know how much of it is still there. But let's go back. New Madrid land certificates, good for public land elsewhere, were provided sufferers by U.S. Relief Act of 1815, which benefited mostly speculators. Never benefits people that need it. In 1862, the Union forces captured New Madrid and by means of a canal sawed through a submerged forest to a bayou, gained control of island number 10 and command of the river. Nearby in Mississippi County is Belmont Battlefield, scene of an 1861 engagement in which both federal forces under Grant and Confederates under Pillow claimed victory. New Madrid, seat of government of one of 5 Spanish districts, later one of Missouri's first 5 counties, serves a farming community. Cotton and soybean crops predominate. Rich land has been reclaimed by the Little River and St. John's levee drainage systems. I'm not going to pause here simply because they'll want to get the walk along the levee, the observation deck here. This is a really nice deck they've got built out here. All right, we are looking for this marker right up here. Seagulls are swarming. Let's hope I don't go out by pigeon attack, or whatever they are. Okay. Woo, there's a lot of reading on this. I'll just try to hit the highlights, and we won't read every word of this because, yeah, there's a lot there. With the sun shining the way it is, I just don't know what you're going to get here. New Madrid and Island No. 10, a state divided the Civil War in Missouri. This is General John Pope. Hope you can see that. And he was the American side, and over here is Brigadier General W.W. McCall for the Confederates. It says, at this location and other locations up and downstream, the siege of New Madrid, I don't know, can you see this? The siege of New Madrid and the Island No. 10 campaigns took place during the months of March and April of 1862. Union victories here ensured federal control of the middle Mississippi River and were a part of a string of Union victories at Forts Henry and Donelson, Pea Ridge, Shiloh, and Corinth in the western theater of the Civil War. These victories provided a momentum for the Union cause in the West, launched the careers of such generals as U.S. Grant, William T. Sherman, and John Pope, and gave the Union control of Missouri, Kentucky, and much of Tennessee. The first attempt by the Confederacy to block the Mississippi from federal penetration came in September of 1861, when forces under the command of General Leonidas Polk violated Kentucky neutrality by occupying and fortifying Columbus, Kentucky, with earthworks and 140 pieces of artillery. On November 7, 1861, General U.S. Grant led troops in an unsuccessful attack against a Confederate encampment at Belmont, Missouri, on the opposite side of the river from Columbus. As for Columbus itself, Grant chose not to throw his troops against its massive earthen ramparts. Instead, he bypassed that stronghold and moved his army up the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers and captured Forts Henry and Donelson on February 6 and 13, 1862, respectively. In gaining these victories, Grant severed the supply line to Columbus and compelled the Confederates to abandon the site. Okay, so we're here. Hopefully you can see my finger. There we go. I have almost no view on this screen. I apologize with the way the sun is glaring, and I'm probably going to end up reading more of this than I had planned. But we're right here, New Madrid, okay? And here, if you follow my finger along where the river is Island No. 10, and it's right down here. I will point the camera downriver when I'm done reading, but I doubt you're going to see any of it at all, because the river does curve. Okay, blockading the Mississippi, New Madrid and Island No. 10. The next viable location for blockading the Mississippi lay some 40 miles downstream at the hairpin double bends of the Mississippi River at Island No. 10, so named because it was the 10th island below the mouth of the Ohio River and New Madrid. At this point, the river resembles an S laid on its side, with Island No. 10 at the bottom of the first bend and New Madrid at the top of the second. In selecting this site, the Confederate engineers, I'm going to have to keep my hand in there just so I can follow something along. In selecting this site, the Confederate engineers chose well. In early 1862, the low-lying bottomlands that ringed Island No. 10 and New Madrid were naturally swampy and had been further flooded by spring rains. An attack by land on Island No. 10 was impossible, and New Madrid could only be approached along a narrow band of high ground known as the Sykeston Ridge. Okay, get up here where I can see my hand, because I can't read anything through this camera. By the time that Union High Command decided to assault the Island No. 10 and New Madrid positions, they found that the Confederates had prepared a daunting reception for them. To attack or bypass the island by water, the Federals would have had to face a gauntlet of 43 pieces of heavy artillery emplaced in 5 Tennessee shore batteries and 4 batteries on the island itself. New Madrid was flanked on either side by Forts Thompson and Bankhead, which were defended by a total of 24 heavy guns. All right, the siege at New Madrid. One of the markers that we had in this county was about this siege of New Madrid, and so their marker was missing. And so we're going to learn about that here, which is good. In late February, Union General John Pope, then stationed in central Missouri, was placed in command of the 20,000-man Army of the Mississippi and ordered to advance on Island No. 10 / New Madrid. The Island No. 10 batteries could be supplied and reinforced in 2 ways: upstream by river and by a road leading from Tiptonville, Tennessee, to the shore opposite the island defenses. For a successful advantage, Pope had to cut off both routes of supply. By capturing New Madrid, Pope could bring the river under his guns and prevent any enemy supply boats from reaching Island No. 10 from below. Pope moved his army along the Sykeston Ridge to launch his campaign against New Madrid. By March 3rd, his army had New Madrid under siege. In fortifying New Madrid, the Confederates had incorrectly assumed that Pope would not be able to haul heavy and cumbersome siege guns along the miry roads to the Federal entrenchments which faced the 2 forts and Confederate gunboats that protected the New Madrid position. It required 10 days of Herculean effort, but the Federals succeeded in dragging the heavy guns to their positions before the town. In the meantime, Pope dispatched a force to Point Pleasant, 11 miles further south, established a battery there, and began to harass Confederate river traffic. On the 13th, the 428-pound siege gunboats arrived, and the Federals set about in earnest to shell the forts and the fleet of gunboats. Unable to hold New Madrid against siege guns, the Confederate commanders ordered the evacuation of the position during the night amidst a rainstorm and much confusion. The next morning, the Federals entered the deserted forts to discover an immense quantity of stores that had been abandoned in the hasty retreat. 33 cannons, several thousand stand of small arms, tents for an army of 10,000 men, and other materials fell into Pope's hands. The Island No. 10 campaigns. I hadn't planned on reading all of this, but I don't know that you can. Pope's next task was to cross the river and take Tiptonville. To accomplish this, he would need gunboats to silence the Confederate batteries positioned on the opposite shore to contest his crossing and troop transports. The only way any gunboats or transports could reach him was past the deadly batteries of Island No. 10. Federal Fleet Commander Flag Officer Andrew Foote was reluctant to bring his fleet within shooting distance of the Confederate guns after the guns of Fort Donelson had revealed to him the terrific pounding his ironclad gunboats could receive from the Confederate cannons. If any of his 7 ironclads became disabled on the Mississippi, the gunboats would drift helplessly downstream into Confederate hands. So Foote instead proceeded to lay a heavy bombardment on the shore and island batteries with his gunboats and his 10 mortar boats. As furious as the 2-week-long cannonading was, it caused little damage. The frustrated Pope pleaded repeatedly for Foote to attempt to run the blockade, but Foote remained reluctant to do so. Pope's resourceful engineers proposed that they dig a canal above Island No. 10 that would connect with St. John's Bayou, which in turn emptied into the Mississippi at New Madrid, thus bypassing the batteries. There's a view of the attack on Island No. 10 by the flotilla. Pope blessed this project, and a regiment set to work constructing a canal 50 feet wide and 12 miles long. 6 of those miles were cut through heavy timber, where every tree had to be sawn off 4.5 feet below water. Woo. This remarkable feat was accomplished in 19 days. By April 4th, it was possible to ferry shallow draft troop transports down to Pope at New Madrid. The deep draft gunboats, however, could not be moved by this route. In the face of this impasse, Foote at last relented and permitted Commodore Henry Walk and a hand-picked crew of volunteers to attempt to run past the island batteries. In one of the most dramatic episodes of the Civil War, on the night of April 6th, the ironclad gunboat Carondelet ran past the batteries in a furious storm, punctuated by vivid flashes of lightning, taking only 2 hits in the process. This daring feat was repeated the next night by the Pittsburgh. Pope worked quickly to bring about the conclusion that was now inevitable. On April 7th, the Carondelet and Pittsburgh silenced the Confederate batteries on the Tennessee shore. This done, Union troops were ferried across to Tiptonville in time to block the escape route of thousands of Confederates who were frantically attempting a retreat. Meanwhile, the stranded soldiers on Island No. 10 surrendered to Foote. At 2:00 a.m. on the morning of April 8th, the Confederate commander, Brigadier General W.W. McCall, unconditionally surrendered his entire force to Pope's army. The aftermath of this siege. The Island No. 10 campaign had ended, and Federal forces could claim a glorious victory. Pope reported an incredible haul of prisoners and equipment that included the capture of 3 generals, 273 field and company officers, 6,700 privates, 123 pieces of heavy artillery, and an immense quantity of ammunition, small arms, and supplies of every description. All of this had been accomplished with fewer than 100 casualties on the Union side. The Confederacy not only experienced these severe losses, but also faced the harsh reality that they had also lost the middle Mississippi River. The disintegration of the Mississippi Valley defenses continued with the loss of Fort Pillow, Tennessee, which was abandoned on June 1st after the Confederate evacuation of Corinth, Mississippi. Memphis fell 5 days later. By mid-June of 1862, only Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Port Hudson, Louisiana remained to be conquered in order to give the Union control of the entire river. 2 months after his triumph, Pope was called east to assume command of the Army of Virginia and to see if his success in the west could be duplicated in the east. The test came shortly when Pope faced Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson at the Battle of Second Bull Run. And so here's them cutting through the canal and removing snags along the bayou. So here's the river. Again, you won't be able to see Island No. 10 from here. It's around that curve down there at that end. But there we go. This was a very, very valuable piece of ground to hold, and a very important piece in the toward the end of the Civil War. Controlling the Mississippi River was a huge part of the win for the Union.
This marker is for the Battle of Island No. 10. In February of 1862, General John Pope concentrated an army in southeast Missouri for the purpose of capturing New Madrid and Island No. 10. Federal troops cut a channel 12 miles long to bypass Island No. 10. Transports and smaller boats were taken through this canal, while 2 large gunboats, under cover of darkness, ran the batteries on the island. The Confederate position was now untenable, and on April 7, 1862, Confederate forces evacuated the island and marched to Tiptonville, Tennessee. Thus, the capture of Island No. 10 opened the Missouri River to the Federal forces and marked a strategic turning point of the war. And then we have a cannon here, and cannonballs. And then this marker, the front is missing. And then we have another marker here that is missing. And even though this marker is missing, I can tell you that this right here is Bissell's submergible saw. And you can see the saw blades down here on the bottom.
Well, here we are on the edge of the Mississippi River in New Madrid, Missouri. And we've got a couple of markers here. It's pretty cool looking out. The river's kind of low. But we've got this marker, which is the water route to Indian Territory. It says, this was a remote stretch of the Mississippi River when steamboats of Cherokee passed by on their way west to Indian Territory on the water route of the Trail of Tears. River traffic in 1838 was limited to the daylight hours because of snags and shifts in the river. It is probable that one or more of the steamboats stopped at New Madrid because there were not many places to acquire supplies, including food for the travelers as well as wood and water for steam engines. Local pilots were often hired to take boats through nearby stretches of the river. Physicians who lived here may have tended to Cherokee sick from the exhaustion and the close quarters on board ship. At the time, the town of New Madrid had only 317 residents, 159 of whom were enslaved. So you can see the map here. It's hard to see what I've got going on here. Anyway, we're here. Okay. It says the steamer Warren brought news of the loss of the steamboat Monmouth and the death of at least one half of her infamously crowded passengers. This fatal and most appalling accident arose from a collision between these two boats, but from the best intelligence we can procure, the blame rests upon the Monmouth. 600 creek were jammed into this boat, and 300 have perished. The unreliability of navigable rivers, safety concerns, and severe health threats meant that only a minority of Cherokee traveled by river rather than overland. Steamboats pulling long flatboats and keelboats were common and part of a bustling scene on the Arkansas and Mississippi rivers in the 1830s. And this is another, they pass this way, marker. We see this all along the Cherokee Trail of Tears. And as I've done before, I have read these word for word, but as I've done before, I'm going to just go along here and let you pause and read if you would like. This talks about the dangers of the water travel part of the Trail of Tears. And, they didn't use that for a lot of them. You can see that there were several paths that were taken for the different tribes, and they forcibly removed them all out of their land. Very inhumane. And then later they came for what they gave them. I mean, it was just... But we want to preserve these trails and preserve this history because it does not deserve to be forgotten. We have to remember these things and not do these horrible acts ever again. It is nice looking out here over the Mississippi. I always enjoy that. All right, guys, that is New Madrid County, Missouri. And what'd you think? There's a lot of history there, wasn't there? There's a lot going on. So if you haven't liked or commented or followed me and all of that, please do so, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Historical Markers.